All ideas start with a seed, a germ, an inspiration. And because I am really attracted to highly figured wood, typically my inspiration is that wood itself, is a chunk of tree carcass that in some way inspires me. And this project began with this wood right here. This is box elder. Now, this box elder tree grew up, lived a probably harsh life at the very verge of its growing range in a small Plains, Montana town. It thrived in the summer, it got stunted in the winter, heavy pruning because it overhung a garage, and all of that twisted this tree up until it produced a tremendous amount of highly figured burl wood. Not bulbous offshoots, rather, but entire trunks of this figured wood. And while this slice here is a little plain and doesn't do it justice, there is a little bit of that burl wood you can see right through here. The process began several years ago when I went and retrieved this following an unfortunate incident involving a windstorm, some root rot, and a parked pickup truck from a friend's house. And they'd already bucked it up into not quite firewood-sized chunks because the pieces of wood we were talking about were massive. They'd bucked it up into smaller chunks, and even then it took two of us and a crane to load them on the truck. They were gigantic, and that's where the inspiration began. I ran it up to our sawmill and I cut it. Our sawmill is up in Kalispell, Montana. And because I had this wood, and because we own the sawmill, and my father is almost equally fascinated by opening trees up, we just had no limits. We could cut whatever we wanted. Sure, let's cut some traditional. How about we make some end cuts? That's what this is. This is a flat slabbed chunk of box elder. There's the center of the tree trunk. Here are the three stalks that grew out together at some point in the beginning. There's a branch that was pruned off, 70 years ago, buried down inside. This is a section of tree. Now those are inherently unstable. I sort of dried them in my own kind of creation. I didn't expect it to survive. You shouldn't be able to. This is a slab. This is a slice. It's a cookie right out of the center of the tree. It should have cross-grained, popped, and blown this thing all apart. So what I did was I tarped it, and I made a tunnel, and I choked down the exit of my tunnel, and I put a fan in the entrance. And I could vary it, and I could pump air through it one day when it was kind of cooler and a little damper, and on hot, dry days I could shut everything down and hold that moisture inside. God smiles on the newbies, I suppose, and we got away with it with very, very, very little drying loss. So I had these, we'll call them wafers, I suppose, for lack of a better term, in my pile. At that point, basically, I flattened them. This started out as a much more irregular shaped log. This is bark inclusions around here. And so I flattened it out, and then I put it on my table saw, and you'll see the jig later, and I cut it round. And I did 3 of them at one time, because that's what I was going for this project. I then stuck all 3 of them carefully, and by carefully I mean I sort of forgot them in a corner, for another full year. And then re-examined them. And when I began the project, I had these 3 cookies, which had now been drying for, 2.5, 3 years. Hard, dense, very low moisture content, and yet we'd gotten away with very, very little cracking. It's an amazing success story that I'm not sure I could repeat even if I had to. And this is the inspiration. This is Genesis right here. This cookie of wood. What can I do with it? We make a lot of tables because it's one of the best ways to show off highly figured wood. But there's only so many tables you can do. I wanted to do something different. Years ago, I raised eyebrows, won design contests, and even a county fair by turning a large platter on the table saw. And while I can't claim to have invented the process, it was one of basically my own creation. And people alternated from saying it was the single most dangerous thing they'd ever seen in their life, which seems excessive, but whatever, to saying that it was absolutely genius. I wondered if I could reinvent that. I wondered if I could use that same process and this time turn an entire tree into a bowl. Not segments, not glued up, but the whole thing. And turn it on the table saw. And that idea got us to this point right here. What we have here is the turned down actual wafer of box elder tree, the mate to this one below it. You can see the burl wood in the edges. I have got it ringed with some beautiful old cherry and this one anyways, a stepped rim. This one and its sister were kind of experiments. I did them both at the same time, and so throughout the video series you will watch me interchange processes between the two. I'm sorry if it bothers you. To be totally honest, I didn't think that both of them would survive all the way through, and one of them almost didn't. But we saved it. It wasn't this one, it was its sister. You'll notice that this one has much finer lines. It's got a little thicker base, much thinner rim. I'm also spanning a fair bit of pretty serious bark inclusions. This is the one we almost lost, but we held on by the skin of our teeth. So that's where we started. We started with an old box elder tree that lived its life and died on the hood of a pickup truck. And we now have two large decorative bowls turned from a single piece of wood, concentric rings clearly visible, without a lathe, on the table saw. It's an interesting journey. I don't know if we'll get as much rage or interest as we did last time, but that's the scope of this project. And I think it's totally awesome that in the middle of all of this, I get a lawnmower outside and a freight train coming through town. But what are you going to do? Rural Montana. I hope you stick around for the rest of it.